If you're counseling nutrition clients in your business, you may be wondering how to maximize the opportunity to work with physicians to get referrals. Well, join me in this video where I share how I get referrals and the best practices that I use to get the most out of them. Hey folks, I'm Amy Hager. I'm a registered dietitian in a telehealth-based private practice. In today's video, I want to share with you how I use referrals to work with clients and what you need to know about them. So let's jump in. A lot of times we use the word referral loosely, right? So getting referrals for your business, they can come from a variety of sources like word of mouth or from friends or family or people that know you. And people might just call you up with, say, oh, hey, I was referred from a friend. But what I'm talking about in this video are medical referrals that come from healthcare providers, and they are referring one of their patients to you for nutrition therapy. Medical referrals are a little bit different than word of mouth referrals in a few ways. So let me go over that first of all. You know, they carry a little bit more clout because oftentimes if you're working with insurance companies, they can require a medical referral in order to see a dietitian. And I do have an example of a medical referral here on my tablet, and you want to capture key information in your referral. So you want to have your contact information above. So that's like your name, the name of your practice, phone number, email, and fax number, so that way they can have a way to get in contact with you or send the referral back to you. And then you also want to have the patient information. So on mine, I can have patient name, date of birth, patient phone number, so I have a way to contact the patient. And then you want to capture medical diagnosis. Now, this isn't necessarily something that you're filling out. This is something that the healthcare provider would fill out. And then the other critical piece of the referral is the provider's name and the provider's NPI number. That's the National Provider Identification Number. And in certain insurance examples, you need to include that number when you're submitting a claim. So you want to capture NPI number of the provider, their signature, and the date of the referral that it was signed. So it doesn't have to be a long, complicated form. As you can see, mine is just a few lines long. It makes it very quick for the provider to fill out, and then the staff can fax it right back to you, or if you don't have a fax, they might be able to securely email it to you using your email. So this is the basic form that I use for all my medical nutrition therapy. Once I get the form faxed back, I can even upload that into my patient software so that it stays HIPAA compliant in the cloud. So why is a medical referral important? Well, it's a formal documentation of the patient's illness, and some insurance companies require that the provider have referrals on file. If you were ever to have a case of an audit of your chart notes and you needed to show proof that you had a referral, you'd be able to pull that out from your files. And the other thing that's important is that medical nutrition therapy coverage from insurances can vary based on the diagnosis. So sometimes if someone has one condition, like let's say obesity, they might qualify for a certain number of visits. But if someone has a different condition, say high blood pressure, they might qualify for another type of coverage. So they might get more or less visits that way. Or they may have a copay associated with it, or it might be covered as a preventative service. So the diagnosis is really important to get from the provider because it's outside of the dietitian's scope of practice to diagnose the patient themselves. So even though it might be clear that the patient has hypertension, you're not really allowed to put that into your notes unless you have proof of documentation from the patient or the patient's provider that that is a condition that they have. So that's what makes the referral form really important, because it's your proof that you're addressing their healthcare concern that's been diagnosed by another provider. Some insurance companies like Medicare require a new referral every calendar year. So if you continue to see the patient, you need to be in touch with their provider to get a new referral signed and dated every year. Now you might be wondering, how do you get referrals, right? This is the big key. So referrals are cool, but how do you get those? So doctors might be finding you in the insurance network. They might be looking for a dietitian in the local area, see your name listed. If you're not listed with insurance, they might find you in another online directory like HealthProfs or ZocDoc. If they're looking for dietitian providers and they're doing an online search, they might find you listed in a directory if you've listed yourself. The most reliable way to get ongoing source of referrals, and this is how I do it, is to partner with another practice, maybe a complementary practice that complements your niche. I'm a diabetes educator, I specialize in weight loss, and I'm partnering with a cardiology practice right now. So how do you get these partnerships? It's nice to have another person that can introduce you if you don't know someone yourself. You certainly could do some cold calls around to find out if any types of clinics or provider groups are looking for dietitians for their patients. Not everybody has an in-house dietitian, so it can be a really sought after specialty to have a place to refer patients. So you're really doing a great service by advertising you're open for business and saying that you're willing to accept referrals. And providers are a lot more keen on this idea if they know that you also take insurance, because that tends to be the bulk of the type of clients that they work with. So it's definitely a boon to get in network with the insurance companies if you want to start partnering with provider offices. But if you have maybe there's a friend or relative or someone that you know who can introduce you to the practice, that helps break the ice and it makes it a little bit easier to get a foot in the door. Another way you could get a foot in the door if you don't know anybody at all is sending a package to the office with maybe your business cards and some pens or some branded merchandise and say that you're open for business. You can have postcards of what the kind of services that you provide. In my case, my husband works in a cardiology practice, so he was able to get me set up with the office manager. And by talking with her, she said that she was willing to do a Zoom meeting at the staff meeting and give me 5 to 10 minutes to introduce myself and say what I could do for their patients. So it's very key if you do get this opportunity to speak in front of all of the providers and all of the staff, is to be really clear about how you can help with your patients, what you can do for them, and how they can work with you. And referral in this piece is key. Once you get the okay from the practice and they're excited to be able to send patients your way, you definitely want to give them business cards for the office, but don't forget to send over the referral. So you can either have it as an electronic document and they can print it off, or just give them a stack of paper referrals to keep in the exam rooms so the providers can fill them out and send them to the front office staff so that they can fax them back to you. So I wanted to go over some best practices for handling referrals. And that is, so what'll happen is I'll get my referral coming in to my practice that's faxed over from the provider office, from the cardiology office, and I see the patient and their name. So I'm going to give them a phone call and introduce myself as Amy. Hi, I'm Amy Hager. I'm a registered dietitian, and I heard from your provider, and I would mention the provider by name specifically so that it really helps the patient remember the conversation. And then I'll say, you guys had a conversation about potentially working with a dietitian to help address the diagnosis that's on the form. And then I'll usually say, does that sound familiar? And then they'll kind of jog their memory and think, oh yeah, I do remember having that conversation. So then you can tell them a little bit more about how you work with patients. Usually I take the time to explain that I'm a telehealth practice. I do virtual appointments. I am in network with insurance companies. I am in network with your insurance company, as I see it written down here. And I can find out more information about that if you'd like to know. And I can also pencil you in on the calendar and get you set up in my system if that's something you're interested in. So I give the patient information about what I do. Sometimes I'll go into detail about how many visits I think it might take to kind of resolve a problem. How I typically work with patients, I might say, looks according to your insurance, it tends to cover 10 visits per year, and we definitely have a lot of time to work with. And there also seems to be no copay. So I like to provide as much information as I can when I get them on the phone. Now, the situation that might come up is that you don't get the patient on the phone on the first try. So I'll leave a message mentioning the provider and mentioning myself, but I won't talk about the diagnosis over the phone. And then I'll say, you can give me a call back, or you can text to this number to give them some instruction. And then I wait a couple of weeks. If I haven't heard from the patient, I'll reach out again. And if I still am not connecting with the patient, it's kind of telling me that they may not be interested in the service. They might not be very motivated. So on my third call, what I say on my voicemails is I say, if you're not interested, I'm going to go ahead and let your provider know that you're declining this service for a referral for nutrition therapy, so that they know that I'm talking with their provider, because sometimes the patient doesn't know you at all, right? They're going to know the provider and they have more of an invested relationship with them. So they might be wanting to do something that, pleases that relationship, and then that might prompt them to call you back. But if you're really clear in saying, this is going to be the last time I reach out, and then I'll close out this referral, it's giving them some finality to know that you're not going to be reaching out again. So I'll keep notes on my referral pages to say what dates did I call and what transpired or what kind of message I left. And then I like to close the loop with the referrals by letting the provider know what's happened since I've been working with the client. One best practice is to fax over notes to the clinic for the provider to see that you've been working with a patient and what type of progress that you've made. But I know so many providers are busy and they don't have time to read a lot of extra notes. So another approach that I take is that I'll do an end of the year summary, and I'll do some highlights from some of the patients that they've sent me, and I'll say, patient A lost 20 pounds, or this patient reduced their LDL by 20 points. And I'll do a few examples like that. And then I send that summary in with like a basket of goodies as a thank you to the practice for partnering with me and sending their patients into my care. So it's a showing of appreciation, but also closing the loop to keep them informed that you're still keeping up with your patients, you're still active, and you're not just a ghost on the other side of the screen, just taking referrals and then you never hear from the dietitian again. So it's a great way to stay in touch with both the provider and with their patients. Sometimes I have the patients reach out to the provider as well. That's what I wanted to share with you guys as far as working with referrals, and maybe a couple of ideas about partnering with other medical practices. But I definitely think it's a great way to gain more patients for your practice, and it gives you all that legal documentation that you would need if you are working with insurance, or if you ever were to get audited, you have all of that on file. So hopefully this video was helpful, guys. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you're thinking about doing, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to catch the latest video here. And don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos on private practice and being self-employed as a dietitian.